the buying landscape for B2B has become more complicated, partly because I think everyone overbought during the go-go years of 2000, 2001.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, we have Adam Sandman, who is the founder and CEO of Inflectra, a leading provider of software test management, application lifecycle management, and automation platforms. With a background in programming from the age of 10 and a significant tenure as director of Sapient Government Services, Adam is responsible for Inflectra's product strategy, technology innovation, and business development. His leadership has propelled Inflectra to achieve substantial growth and recognition within the tech industry, and that is why we're excited to have him on the show today. Adam, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Devin. It's a pleasure to be here on the show today.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. There's so much here to chat about. So to kind of kick things off, I guess if you give me maybe just a couple of minutes, a brief background of who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the CEO of Inflectra.
The journey is an interesting one. I think maybe not atypical for a lot of founders. I grew up in a small town in Wales in the United Kingdom, and I got an interest in computers at a really young age. I think I mentioned before the podcast, it rains a lot there. So hanging out in the library, using computers, messing about with them was a lot of fun, a way to do things out of the rain. And at that time, it was without dating myself, early 80s, technology was new. Home computers was a new thing. I got going with it, and I realized in those days you had to write software because there wasn't much available. Like nowadays, you can do anything with a computer. Then it didn't do much unless you were able to dive in and write some programs. And so I wrote some programs using BASIC, and then I think some C and Pascal and some of the older languages that you'd use back in those days. Did that for a while, had fun with it. Then grew up, went to college, did a degree in physics. Realized I didn't want to work in a lab; it wasn't for me. And after a few years of college and all that fun side of becoming a young adult, decided I wanted to get into IT again, because that's really where my passion was, not so much in the science. And in physics, you often use computers, so I think I realized I was more interested in the computers than the physics. So then I was very lucky. I came to America on a working vacation. It was 1997. The internet was beginning to boom. Everyone was looking for programmers. Got a job with Sapient in Boston, doing actually programming initially. Then I ended up growing up the ranks to sales and marketing, became a director there, doing service sales. So really selling, projects using IT to both commercial clients and then eventually to the government business. Ended up in DC where I am now. And this was about 2005. Around that time, I realized that there was a big gap in what Sapient could do around testing and test management. And so I thought, well, there's a product here that I wish we had that no one's willing to sell us. The prices for the few tools that do exist are very expensive, very hard to use. There's definitely a gap in the market. So I seeing that niche in the market, decided and I always wanted to start a business. It was a good time, and launched a company, bootstrapped it, still is today, and grew it over the last 18 years, where we now have customers all over the world, a distributed global workforce, and taking it to the next level every year you're trying to take it to that next level. But I think we've come a long way as a bootstrap company in a competitive market. I mean, we compete with people like Atlassian, Microsoft, HP, IBM. These are not small companies, and so as a small business, you have to find the niche that's going to serve you well, and how you're going to build a viable business without being trampled by the elephants in any industry that you're in. So it's been kind of a wild ride.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm very present to, is that at some point you're going to end up facing the elephants and really having to contend with them. And it looks like you've been able to navigate that quite easily. I obviously, we don't see all of the challenges and things that you've gone through to get here, but
We might make it look easy, but it's probably not been easy.
yeah, well, and I think that's the magic of the work that you do. Maybe if you could, because I know that your role has obviously varied throughout the life of Inflectra. Could you talk to maybe what some of your early responsibilities were, and then maybe what you're up to now?
And when I started the company, it was just me. So I was programmer, website builder, salesman, support, and pretty much everything, finance, accounting. And I guess, if you're listening to this and looking to start a company, especially if you don't raise money, you're going to have to do it with a very small team. And as a result, you're going to have lots of hats that you're going to wear, and find the things that you can do. If it's a one-person company, you have literally every hat. If it's a 2 or 3-person company, which it grew into within a few years, I was able to divest some of the hats. So initially I was everything. And then I realized I was good at sales. I was a good programmer. So I got someone to help out with the tech support and some of the development testing. Then I got someone to help out with some of the sales, processing orders, renewals, a lot of the business side of the day to day. And then after that, we sort of decided to build a professional sales and marketing team because whilst I could do some of it, wasn't particularly good at it. There are people much more gifted at that. And then on the product side, hired someone to manage all the products, be our CTO, so I could really get out of the technology day to day as well. So whereas, I don't know, 17, 16 years ago, I was probably doing half programming and half sales and demos. Now I don't do much programming. I do dabble. I like to stay current and fresh. So I don't touch our core products, but I do dabble in little extensions and things that I find keeps me skilled as a technologist. I talk at conferences. I travel a lot, going to Australia in a week, actually less than a week, to go to a conference and speak. So my job is to gone from being programmer and kind of doer to cheerleader, leader, HR. I still do a lot of the HR, a lot of the finance. So we haven't yet got a professional CFO. So I do probably more finance and lawyering than I do other stuff. And as we get bigger, we'll probably, get a fractional CFO to do some of that. So I think there's always things you're going to do. You need to sort of divest over time. But my responsibility has really gone from being like a programmer developer to a kind of a true CEO. That probably when 15 years ago, it was really more of a, freelancer developer, doing a bit of everything, dabbling in everything.
Yeah, that's quite an evolution. There's a lot of different stages to the growth as well, and that's something
Right.
that people don't understand is, that first 100,000 is a different beast than the first million, and that's a different beast than the eight figures that you're at now. Could you
Right.
talk to how your strategies differed, early on in terms of how you acquired customers versus how you approach it now?
I mean, there's different stages of growth of the company. There's also the maturity of the industry and the maturity of your competition. So started off the company, we really were a low price point test management tool. So a very defined product segment that was existing. So one of the decisions I made at the beginning was I couldn't have the budget to create a new segment. So I wasn't able to say, here's a brand new innovative product that does something different. What I took was a product segment that existed, but basically had very expensive enterprise options that were beyond the pocket of most companies, and then basically nothing or open source that was really not very, very good. So I was able to take an existing product segment, write code, develop it, market it online with online ads like Google AdWords and basic SEO, and really with no sales force and not much other than AdWords and some SEO that was easier then. We got to the first 100K or so, really all direct online, make it happen, inbound, no cold calling, no outbound email, really no LinkedIn, no social. This was in 2006, 2007, so it was easy.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing back then is that people like our competitors back then weren't even Atlassian. It was really HP, IBM, and some of the bigger enterprise testing companies. Many of them don't exist anymore, or being acquired into bigger roll-ups. They weren't spending on AdWords. They didn't realize that you could sell over the internet. They were still sending people around with CDs and briefcases to do demos in your office. And so the business model of software as a service really hadn't yet evolved. So by being early, we can be very effective, very cost efficient. Now, 2024, today, we're spending, I don't know, 20K, I think a month on AdWords alone, an equivalent amount on SEO. And I don't think we have the reach that we had back then because
Right.
everyone's doing it. Right. We're competing with everyone on every keyword. Every keyword's probably got 100 people bidding on that one same keyword in your segment. That wasn't the case. So there are things you'll find that work both when you're small, but also the industry is maybe new where your competitors aren't aware of something. So if you find a new channel, whether it's LinkedIn or social or outbound email, there's something you're going to find that's probably going to work for you for a while. It's not going to work forever because you'll grow and then the market changes. Another thing I would say that's different is that we realized that we wanted to become a more differentiated product because other people then, of course, copied us and had tools that were similar to ours. You can't always be the low cost provider forever. You have to decide, how do I specialize if I can't be the lowest cost, or certainly I don't want to be the lowest cost because that's a very difficult business to be in, to be a truly commoditized business. So then we look for specific industries and verticals. Because we're small, we didn't necessarily want to compete on every single deal with every single big company. Let's find some niches that we're better at, where we can be more differentiated at. So that was something we did a bit later once we realized that just being the lowest cost provider was not going to be a long-term growth strategy for the company.
So in the early stages, you're the one who's kind of fielding all the calls, you're having
Yep.
the conversations with the right people.
Right.
Then you kind of cross this threshold where, okay, I got to do the work now. I need somebody else on the phones, right?
Right. That's
Um,
hard.
yeah, how did you make that transition? And then obviously over time you're going to optimize that, but I'd love to kind of look at what you did to make that happen initially? What was it? What was the crossover, that the catalyst that made that happen?
Well, I mean, there's only so many hours in a day, and I wanted to have sleep, and I had young children still. When I started the company, my children were 2 and 6, so young
Okay.
kids. That's
Yeah.
why I didn't raise money, also because I didn't wanted the. I started partly part time. I wanted the work life balance because that was my stage of life. Um, but there's only so many hours in a day, and you also need to get some development work done because they're going to expect new features. So I first two hires were really around support, and I would say frontline sales, but really just like answering the phone, answering basic questions, and doing everything up to a demo. So then I still was doing the demo. So if you came onto and initially we didn't do demos, so that's another good point. We first started with self-service, right? You went to the website, you had a free trial, you could use it yourself. You had questions, you'd call us, and then I hired someone to answer the calls and field those kind of basic questions. And if they wanted a demo, we were like, take a hike, nicely. But we don't do demos at our price point. We can't afford to do demos. That's our business model. And customers to a certain point understood that. It's the same way that if you buy certain products and you go to Costco, it's a different experience than if you go to a full service supermarket or go to Lidl. They're different, and IKEA is different to a different kind of furniture store. So we basically positioned it as the lowest cost provider because we don't pretty much do anything other than everything that's self-service. Once we started to raise prices and become more premium, we then had to have people doing demos. So now I've got someone doing support, someone doing basic inquiries, but I can't be doing all the demos all day because there's still only one of me. And so then the next level of expansion of the company was hiring people to do demos. That's a much trickier person to hire for than just someone answering the phone and answering maybe a script of questions. Because if you're doing a demo, that can go in any number of ways. The benefit
Right.
of doing like a discovery call demo kind of thing is you get to guide the customer on their experience. But now you're going from self-service, infinitely scalable. Like 1 billion people can sign up for it in theory, and they can self-service use it as long as you've got resources, technical resources. You now got human resources. So that's one of the things we had to make a decision is we need to be able to have people who can help with demos. But now we're going to need to think about how many of these are we going to do, which time zones are they in. So we now have people in the current day who are doing that across multiple time zones. So we have multiple people in EMEA, North America, Latin America languages, Latin America, and in Asia Pac, for the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand. But that's difficult. So suddenly we went from a business where one person could do almost all of those inquiries to needing like 6 to 8 people. So that's one of the things you got to make. It's not like a simple linear progression. It goes just like a step function. You go from founder sales to professional sales, and we made that jump, and it was rocky. We've hired the wrong people. One of the things we also did was we didn't understand what we were hiring for. We didn't understand our profile. So, for example, we were doing mostly inbound sales with someone who was supposed to be technical, answering questions. But we hired a salesperson, someone who said, "Oh, I know the sales guy; he's really good." We hired a salesperson. Well, they're not an inbound technical person. They were an outbound phone calling, cold calling person. Wasn't very technically savvy. This person was not able to demo the product, didn't really understand the product because it's quite a complex, relatively complex product, software testing. And so they failed. And we also made the classic mistake in sales of giving them inbound leads. Like if we could have hired an outbound salesperson to do outbound and then hand it off to an inbound person to do the demo and all the technical stuff. Well, we weren't that sophisticated. We thought sales is sales, right? So I think a lot of the thing is, especially for a technologist like me, you don't have this background in sales and marketing. You kind of think that all sales is the same, and it's a completely different beast. Enterprise sales, SMB, inbound, outbound. So now most of what we have that works best is having a relationship person paired with a more technical person. That technical person is almost maybe a programmer or a sub-programmer, someone who's very technical, and you pair them with a relationship person who likes going on LinkedIn and making phone calls, and that's a pretty good combination, that pairing. Solutions engineer and like classic pre-sales. But that's still not necessarily an outbound hunter kind of sales. That's a third kind of persona. And then the fourth would be a partner salesperson. The fifth would be a true enterprise going after one big client for 6 months and penetrating them like a GM or I don't know, a board. Those are all different kinds of sales. And, if you're not sure, you're going to try and hire one person to try and do all of it or the wrong person. And so I think as a business, you have to understand what sales motions are we going to enable? What people do we need for those? And then make sure you hire the right people and the right motion for your scale. And it's hard to do. And I think a lot of companies get it wrong.
Yeah, and it seems like you're getting you got it pretty dialed in. You are just kind of, smooth sailing as it were. Obviously, there's always going to be an occasional storm here or there, but at the level that you're at now, what sorts of challenges or friction exists in the sales process that wasn't there kind of maybe in the earlier stages?
I mean, there's always that friction that can happen around inbound, outbound. Now we still do mostly inbound. We haven't done a lot of outbound. Well, we're looking to add outbound motion next year. One of the things we want to do there is make sure if we do have someone who's doing outbound calling, that they only work on those, because if they start working on stuff that's coming in, it's going to create friction with the team who is normally dealing with inbound. The other thing is compensation. We currently have a salary structure for everyone because we don't have anyone who's doing outbound. You start doing outbound, now you're going to think about probably a true quota system, and you want to make sure that they're getting correctly quoted. And also, if someone's helping them, who's a technical resource, how do they get compensated? So it can be tricky. So you have to think through the incentives that people have, make sure everyone feels like it's fair for what the work they're doing. In the past, what the mistake we had made with this earlier hire that I mentioned was that they were fielding inbound inquiries when they were meant to be doing outbound, really, and so they wanted to handle every deal because they got a commission, but no one else got a commission for it. And other people were thinking like, why does he get a commission when I'm doing all the hard work doing the demo and I don't get any commission?
Right.
Now the person was being paid more salary, but again, those are conversations that don't scale well. You have to think about that and be intentional about it. Those are the big frictions we've had historically. The frictions we get now, they're a little bit different. I wouldn't say they're internal to the team, but what often happens is customers, they buy the software after they've been through a pre-sale cycle. So they come to the website, they sign up for a trial, they reach out to us. One of our account manager type persons will reach out to them for a discovery call, does a demo, helps them with any POCs. At some point, they're happy. They buy the product, maybe if you're lucky, they get onboarded, and you should be good to go. Now they want to then get help with technical support. Now they have to reach out to our support team. And our support team is a help desk. It's much more regimented, but they were used to kind of the hand-holding they got in pre-sales. And so now you have to try and explain to them that, well, yes, that was pre-sales. Now in post-sales, you still have access to your account manager, that same person. We've made it the same person, because in the early days, we had a separate customer success person, which made a whole new relationship, which was a bit rocky. So some companies do that. They have separate customer success. Some people and others will take the person in pre-sales and make their continue. There's pros and cons. We may change. We've tried it both ways. But right now we have the same person. And so we have that person be like an escalation point where they need more help than support, but they're not going to troubleshoot everything. And so the clients have this little bit of friction where they want more support than comes free with the product. Our account manager can arrange that as a paid service, but the client was kind of used to that account manager doing everything for them for free. So it's hard for us to balance that expectation around what comes with the product, what's extra with the product, what we did, and any promises that we made in pre-sales need to be maintained. So that's one of the reasons why we have kept that same person throughout. Previously, when we had a separate customer success person as a pre-sales person, pre-sales would do all the work to get the client onboarded. Well, then customer success comes in and says, "I'm your new, person. I replaced the old person you met." Well, that person made these promises. Oh, I didn't know about. That's rocky for the client. So be intentional around what is the customer's life cycle. Who maintains it? Is there going to be one person that does pre-sales through to close beyond into customer success, or are you going to have a customer success team? If you do that, which is fine, make sure you've got a very good handoff process so the customer doesn't get dropped in the middle in the valley of onboarding. Be intentional. I mean, there's no right or wrong way. They both are pros and cons, but you definitely make sure the customer doesn't get dropped. Those were some of the frustrations. I think the other thing we've found interesting is we've tried to go from 100% direct sales to channel sales. So that's another nuance as you grow. However many people you hire, you only have so many relationships. So one of the things we've tried to do is partner with consulting companies, service companies, so they're not really, and even some tech companies that have complementary, non-competitive products. And we've built an ecosystem of those partnerships. And then we have a referral system that we track inbound referrals, and they refer things to us and it goes into our CRM. So we now have deals that not just come from our inbound marketing channel, but also might come through our partner channel. And that can work really well. But on the other hand, it can also be tricky if your partner's price point is not compatible. So if you've got a $10,000 product, but the services they want to sell are $100,000, that's going to be difficult for the client to chew.
Mismatch.
It depends on the direction. If I'm selling $100,000 worth of consulting services and it's my client, they probably don't care that I'm going to use a product that costs $10K because it's a small amount of the contract value and it makes me more productive. That kind of relationship will work okay. But if you're going to work with a consulting company that's got a small sales pipe and they're hoping you to bring deals to them, if you're selling lots of product at 10K, 20K a year annual contract value, and then you're going to try and refer them and they're going to want a 100K consulting deal, that's going to be difficult. So we've had that problem where I think customers that Inbound leads from a consulting partner work quite well because we're a small add-on to their price point, but it's been harder the other way. So if we're working with a consulting firm that doesn't have a strong pipeline and they were hoping us to bring them all the deals, it's been kind of rocky. So we've had to now a bit more mature around when we talk to a consulting partner. It's like, why do you want to partner with us? If it's to make money off referrals, you might get some, but you're really, our value is going to be, can we make you more productive on the projects you deliver? With the client, and get some residual value too.
Right. That customer experience pathway or journey or the
Uh-huh.
map that they follow is
Right,
so important to have it dialed in because not only is it that initial experience, but it's that first impression that they have in working with your company is how they're going to feel about that relationship
right,
as on an ongoing basis. And so if it's a battle at the beginning, then
right.
you're always going to be fighting with that client versus if you give them a nice smooth runway to kind of transition into and all the right people are in the right places to kind of catch that person as they come through it. Well, now you have a completely different scenario as you deal with that person, which points at there's different metrics that we use to determine whether or not that pathway was successful.
Uh-huh.
Adam, I wonder if you could maybe explore a little bit of that. What do you use to determine whether or not, aside from customers being happy, like what specific metrics do you use to determine success for yourself and then for your customers?
I mean, there's the obvious ones around upsell, growth in accounts, the classic revenue numbers that, are we able to sell more revenue into a client without raising the prices? I add more licenses, more products, cross-selling. So we do all of that. And then we do check-ins and NPS stuff. So there's some classic, metrics around customer success and upsell. I think that we do track. Other things we started to do are looking at some of the metrics in the software itself, some telemetry. We're not as sophisticated as I'd like us to be there. I'll just being honest. It's just there's only so much time to work on things. But so one of the things we did is we built some internal onboarding in the tool so that when you start to use it, it has like a checklist that walks you through the first 20 things you should do, and we can then track how they done those and where did they get stuck. So we're starting to do metrics around those. They're almost like their first 2 or 3 days in the application, which is new for us. And then we can see, first of all, what percentage of our clients bother to do any of it, get through some of it. Where do they stop? How can we make that better? And we didn't have that self onboarding tool before, so we were flying blind. Another thing we do is on the email flow. So when you sign up for a trial version, there's like multiple things that happen. So you first of all, if you imagine you have no email, like you never look in your email ever again, the online experience should be as good as possible so that you sign up for a trial, it's ready as soon as possible. It walks you can get into the application quickly. You know how to get back to it if you decide to, go away and come back because you got another life. You know how long it's going to be for. You know who to reach out to. All that should be sort of in the app. Now, the second thing is, now, because there is email, we separately have an email flow which goes out so that as they're going through that, let's say they accidentally close their browser or they forget their login, or they're not sure where to look, or they just aren't, they're doing 10 things at once, which is often the case. The email can be a good method to, help them walk through the journey, but also find where they left off. We found some interesting things with that, though. We used to have and we're doing a lot of A/B testing around email right now and onboarding. These are warm emails. When people signed up before, we would send them a series of multiple emails over the 30-day trial experience, starting with explanations, moving on to kind of like ROI, then moving into things that would help them ideally decide or let us know if it was not the right tool, why. So, gain a yes or no. And we found that really after the first 2 emails, because we use ActiveCampaign, it's a email marketing tool, we can tell really quickly, do they open it? Do they click on it? And then what happens after that? We found that within the first email, the first or two in the sequence, that was it. They wouldn't open any of the others almost. So we've refactored the email sequence to be much more. The first email says almost everything, is beautiful, and is the experience. The other ones we are refactoring also, but we're making those less critical that you even look at them. We may get rid of them, in fact, but we're trying it all out. But that first experience, as you mentioned, is really important because we found that really they look at that first email, they log in that first time, and if those things don't hit right, then it's not going to work so well. Now, that wasn't probably true 18 years ago. 18 years ago, buyers, I think, weren't as, I don't know, sophisticated. Their expectations were, Windows 98 or whatever, no, it's Windows 2000. It's going to be an awful experience. If it's half decent, then it's okay. I think now that the bar has been raised. The other thing is that 2006, when we started the company, most people were still downloading the software and installing it on their own local IT. So already it's a complex experience. I mean, I remember doing tech support back in 2008 or 9 with a client where she was trying to install a enterprise software app on her laptop and install a web server. And I'm walking this person through how to install a web server because that's the only way she could try the software because it was a web app and it was installed on a Windows laptop and installing a Microsoft web server. I mean, we spent hours just getting that up and running and finally up and running. But they were okay with that because that was the state of the art. And then we go to SaaS, you expect a URL, everything should be very easy. So our expectations of what we expect, the iPhone generation and beyond, we expect everything to be slick and seamless. And then when it's not, it's discordant. So I think building a business is more expensive, there's more competitors, and the users are more demanding. So it was easier back then in some ways.
Yeah, times are definitely different
Right,
now.
right. And no one answers their phone. Right. And you call someone at work to check on them and see how your demo was doing. You called their work number, they were at their desk and they answered. Now they're working from home, they've got a mobile caller ID, and they're not going to answer. They're going to delete the voicemail, read it in visual voicemail, then delete it. And they'll ignore your emails or Google's going to put it in spam anyway. I mean, it's a hard world to get hold of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of opportunity or access to different tools too. That's a big
Right,
part of
right.
it. It's like it's not that you're not the best player, it's that there are just too many players,
Uh-huh,
and so we
uh-huh.
have to look at all of them before we make a decision. And then we get stuck in this analysis paralysis, and so you're kind of going back and forth with that with the person to get them to where they need to be.
Right. You go to G2 Crowd, look at all the competitors, and you expand your list to look at. We've seen a lot more, ironically, despite all the online information, it's personal recommendations of actually that are still probably the most. If someone comes from a personal recommendation or they're a previous customer, those are the most qualified clients. Partner recommendations are probably second, and then regular inbound is third. So if but if you think about that, that's a harder to scale business. That we'd started out in 2006 relying on recommendations. We'd have got nowhere because we didn't have any because we were new, right? So people were much more willing, I think, to take a chance back then, especially if the price point was right. Security and compliance is another big issue that I think is new, particularly in the B2B space. I don't know your audience if it's B2B only. If you're dealing with B2C, it's less of an issue, for now at least. B2B buyers are much more technically sophisticated around security, risk, and compliance. We sell a lot to banks, hospitals, and energy companies. These are all industries and defense, aerospace. They're all industries that are very security and risk conscious. And so when the client says yes, maybe 3-4 years ago even, that could be a sale within a month. It can now be 60 to 90 days after the client has said yes that you get the purchase. And since COVID sort of has ebbed and everyone bought this IT on credit cards, there's also been a big backlash in the IT department around credit cards and people buying stuff, buying SaaS subscriptions. So whereas before you could get the client to say, "Oh, I'll put on my credit card, no one will know, it's fine." After COVID, there's been a bit of a reconciliation. Customers are realizing they've got a lot of subscriptions across multiple teams, and no one knows exactly what everyone has bought, but the costs are high. So there's this rationalization. So everything has to go back to IT to buy everything, and therefore we've seen some churn because of that. We've seen customers that would have just said, "I'll put on my credit card," go, "Well, I put on my credit card. Oh, actually, I probably should. I'll need to go through IT," and then it's going to take another 90 days. So I think the buying landscape for B2B has become more complicated, partly because I think everyone overbought during the go-go years of 2000, 2001.
Yeah, we got subscription to death. It's funny
Yep.
enough, but on all of my social medias, there was a week that went by where everybody just had come to terms with the idea that cable didn't die, it just went online. And instead of paying, Shaw or Rogers or
Yeah.
Comcast or whoever it is, we're paying Netflix and Hulu and Prime and, all these other things. So we're right back where we started with the same
And it's
problems that we had
more
before.
expensive probably than before.
Yeah, and it's more expensive. We're coming kind of close to the end of our time together here, Adam, and you've been very generous with your time and your wisdom. I wonder if to kind of wrap things up here, we could get maybe some insight into what kind of trends, what's some of the stuff that's coming down the pipeline, what's Inflectra aiming at, what are your kind of your growth goals, that kind of thing. What's in store on the horizon for you and the work you're doing?
Oh, great. That's a great question. So, on the sales and marketing front, we are looking at exploring a more formal outbound motion we've kind of not done for a long time. That's one lever of growth. AI is a big lever too. We work in the software testing space. Developers have gotten a lot of, tools like Copilot. Everyone's, I'm sure, heard of, Copilot. We're looking to provide similar functionality for our users, testers, QA professionals. So that's driving a lot of interest. And we're seeing that the companies like ours that are adopting it quickly are getting a little bit more market, white space than I think the companies that are not doing that. So I think whether you agree or disagree with it being the future, you have to be on trend, because otherwise people are looking to you as a vendor to have that direction, or they will look somewhere else. I think customer support's been a big thing where we've seen several clients come from other vendors where their customer support's deteriorated because of cost cutting in the last few years. So maintaining customer support. The other big motions for us from a growth standpoint will be looking for large platforms and expanding our partnerships. The one we're looking for actually right now is Amazon AWS. We've used it to host that. We use them to host everything, but we've started working with them on being a partner on their marketplace where you can actually buy our software through their platform, looking to do co-sell motions through their APN program. And this is probably a 6 to 9 month, maybe even a year investment we'll have to put in for this. So one of the things I think you have to look at is you can't do this with every big platform. There's only so many hours in the day. So we're looking at where can we get a platform where our relatively small sales team and our relatively small, physical footprint can we be magnified to a partner channel. And AWS for us looks like it'll be the right one because we can tie nicely into their DevOps offering and their AI offering. And if we can get them to co-sell with us to their clients, it's a way for us to really force multiply what we can do organically. So, that together with an outbound motion, together with AI, those are some of the levers of growth that we're seeing in the next, 9 months to a year. And on the AI side, we use AI internally a lot as well to accelerate what we could do. So, for example, blog writing, content marketing, we're increasing our SEO efforts. We're using ChatGPT not to write blogs because that's very dangerous, but we're using it to take content in one form and refactor for another form. So you might get an academic article that does really well, but you want to turn it into a presentation or maybe a blog post that's more summary, good at summarizing, changing tones. So we're using it to massage and change our intellectual property. We're not using it to create IP as much. I find that to be a very good use case where you're not in the danger of creating effectively, fake content or hollow content. So using it wisely. Developers are using it internally for Copilot to do some accelerating our development efforts with a small dev team. And there's some other AI use cases internally we're looking at, but those are some of the big ones. It's really productivity improvements without, if everyone starts writing articles for Google using AI, it's just going to kill the search market, which is a worry with everyone doing that. Interesting, I read that Reddit and forums are becoming the new hot topic in Google. And so we're actually spending some time to really, we've always had a customer forum online, but we're actually going to have someone be in charge of curating that and really growing it. So rather than seeing it just as a support outreach tool, which we've always seen it as, we're going to see it also as a SEO tool because Google is starting to favor user-generated content again because it sees it as more reliable than all these AI blogs that everyone does that, are all just clones of each other. So those are some of the things we're working on and a bunch of other stuff too, but those are the big ones.
Really big goals, and I love that you just have such a level of clarity, Adam, in the way that you speak and the ideas and the things that you're aiming at. This has been a very refreshing conversation. To kind of close things up here, I wonder if there was a piece of advice that you could offer somebody who's kind of in the same space, doing up to the same stuff. What would that piece of advice be?
Oh, wow. A lot. The advice I suppose would be measure everything because it's without measuring what you're doing. I hate measuring, but we do it. Measure everything you're doing, see what's working. I would say experiment bravely, boldly. Try experiments, be willing to let them die if they don't work, and don't necessarily follow the crowd, but also don't be so stubborn in what you're doing that you don't look for new ideas. It's a hard balance, but I really think measure what you're doing, find where your success is, and double down where you're successful, and then also try new experiments because you never know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I always think we call it the least worst idea. We often brainstorm the least worst idea, and we'll literally start backwards, and we'll get from the worst idea, which might be rappelling down our competitor's building with a flag or spray painting it, for a massive. That was literally one idea we had. To like where you get to an idea that actually isn't so bad. And some of those things you never know that will work really well, and things that you are sure will work don't. So it's good to spread, I think, the risk a little bit. Try things and then measure their success, and then be quick to stop doing something if it's not working as well. Don't throw good money after bad.
That's incredible advice, Adam. If somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain or perhaps work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably two ways. Email adam.sandman@inflectra.com, and then LinkedIn, which is Adam. I think it's Adam Sandman is my handle. Be warning with LinkedIn, I do get a lot of messages. That's why I'm starting to say maybe email is better. Twitter, I am on Twitter, but I haven't used it for years. I'd probably avoid that. So LinkedIn and email are the best two. Happy to chat anytime.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. And for anybody watching and listening, if you did want to reach out to me and my team for your marketing needs, by all means, visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and I will see you in the next.